So the first area that I wanted us to think about is one that has certainly grown in popularity over the 7 years that we've been doing this research, and that is flexible working. So just over 80% of our respondents' organisations offer flexible working, but who are they offering it to and under what circumstances? So we asked of those who've had it offered to them, are they offering it widely and for multiple reasons? And just under 60% said yes, they see flexible working being offered widely and for multiple reasons. So just around our table today, what are your thoughts on flexible working, and where do you see its relevance for equality in the workplace?
I have seen that managers have become more and more open to actually trusting their employees with working from home. And that's what we hear pretty widely, is that if you don't trust your employees to do their work from anywhere, why hire them in the first place?
Absolutely.
And when you're working for a global organization, like I am, there is no fixed 9 to 5 anymore.
Yeah.
And so what do? Do you work 9 to 5 in the office, and then another few years with your, in the morning hours you're working with Europe, in the evening I'm working with India, and then when do you take care of your children and your husband?
Well,
right?
you also don't need to go to sleep.
I need to go to sleep. So this was becoming actually an issue for me, right? Where I was, at the office for these 8 hours or more, and then also taking these calls from home. And this was just driving me nuts. So I actually went to my boss and I spoke to him and he said, look, we have all the options available for you. Do you want to go part-time? If you want to work full-time, like you're somebody who's established yourself. And so this might not be an option that's available to everybody, but for those who can show that they've performed and they have a track record, we make those options available.
I think it's important too, and you touched on this, that to lead by example is extremely important. So as a manager of people, if you're not practicing that flexible working environment or working from home, how do you expect your employees to feel comfortable doing that? So that's something that we've had to really work through in our organization to ensure that folks feel comfortable, and that as managers we're also leading by example.
And are we seeing that this is changing gender equality in the workplace, more access to flexible working? What do we think about that connection?
So I feel like I have seen both men and women take, I wouldn't say advantage, but feel that there is an option out there to be able to do that. I feel it's a great move when I see my male colleagues actually taking some time off to spend time with their family, with their children. I think they're empowering their wives to go out and do more. They are being present to their own family, to their own children. And overall, I feel it's like a very healthy development when both genders feel it's an option available to them.
I think it's important too, as you look at the younger generation, if you will, to be able to attract top talent, you need to be able to offer flexible working arrangements, right? I think we talked about some of the things that are important to us, but the newer, younger generation entering the workforce has different priorities than we have, right? So to be able to meet those, and to your point, be able to be flexible around what's important to someone, I think is important, as well as in the ability to attract top talent.
Absolutely, I think you're absolutely correct there. So we survey our female respondents on how they have advanced in their careers and what they would like to do with their careers. I think one of the things that Women in Treasury seeks to do is to support diverse talent getting ahead. So it will surprise none of you to know that one of the main areas that is considered very helpful to developing a successful career is this concept of mentoring, sponsorship and coaching. So 70% of our 2019 respondents felt this was key. We asked if they had looked for a mentor themselves or if they'd been allocated one by their company to see what kinds of mentoring are we seeing. So 56% had sought a mentoring relationship themselves, and 44% had had it allocated by their company. So let's sort of step back a little bit and think about these three concepts. What's the difference between these three things that we're talking about here, mentoring, sponsorship and coaching, and what approaches can we take to finding those different resources?
Between the two, where the company allocated a mentor versus me finding these people, I felt like I had a better connection with the people that I knew, and I think that was like a key part. That was important to get the most out of the relationship. The other mentors, where the company had just provided mentors, it felt a little, for the lack of a better word, a forced thing. But I've also benefited from coaching. And what I like about coaching is that you get that time just to speak your mind without anybody judging you, you know? Like whether you talk to your husband or your kids, everybody has a little bit of an agenda, right? but you know, with this coach, I can just be me, right? And so I think I did that, and I was amazed at what I discovered about myself as I just even spoke to her. Because sometimes your own voice is buried. You don't want to listen to that, or you ignore it. But when you're talking to somebody, I think it comes out.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like for me, mentors have been that safe space where I can bounce off ideas. And to Anita's point, when you're talking to someone, you have that sounding board. So you're getting those ideas back. They're all probably inside you. They're just helping you to like get it out of your system, and you hear yourself and it all makes sense. And you were probably struggling about it because you didn't, know that you actually had a way out yourself. And I'd actually like to introduce another concept called champion. This is something that came up recently. It's like one of my managers had told me that some of the most important conversations are had in rooms where you're not even present yourself. So you need a champion who's there, who you can share your ideas and dreams about, like, hey, I think I would be really good for that project, or would be really good for this promotion. And I think, so that voice is actually there in those rooms where it makes a difference, and they are talking on your behalf. It might be a conversation which is being had among very senior people. You're not even in their room, but their presence makes sure that your ideas are represented and they know that you're there.
So what can we do to find these people, either to get noticed by them or to proactively go out and find these relationships? Because I think it's so nice to hear how wonderful these resources are, but if you don't know how to get those resources, it's kind of futile. So what advice would you offer to people who are looking for that kind of interaction?
Yeah, I was a pretty shy person for a very long time, and then I resulted just staying in my shell is not going to work very well, and that's where the mentor came in very handy. So once I had those conversations with her, most of the companies around here actually organize for talks where senior women leader or even men, they go up and talk on the stage about what their groups are doing. If something interests you, I feel most of these people, however busy they are, they will make time for you for half an hour to just catch up on coffee. And they all actually, I've realized, a lot of them really want to talk about what makes them passionate. So just setting up that time, just being brave enough to set up that time. And it's fine if they don't have time. Just move on to the next person who's been successful. Just keep at it and set up that time, reach out proactively, and you will find that there are so many people who actually want to talk about what's made them successful. And when they see that interest in you, I feel like it's very organic. They just want to like involve you, just open new doors to you. So that's happened. It's just about like getting out of your own shell and reaching out to them.
Kev, do you have anything to
Yeah,
add?
I think for us, we in some ways have formalized that process a little bit. So we actually, as part of our human resources area, they put exchange in place of sorts where folks that are looking to become a mentor can interface with other folks that are looking for a mentor. So there should be a crossing of communication between the two groups to help put those relationships in place. I would say the second thing that we've done, we tried to make it part of our performance management review system, right? So I'm talking to my employees, often around how are their mentor relationships working, or do they need a mentor? How can I be helpful? So I think that proactive approach is also something that we've tried to emulate within our organization.
Yeah, from my experience, I've noticed that people, actually, this is the story we tell ourselves. Like even I, as I was, initially I never thought about sponsors, I never thought about mentors, etc. But, and I thought, their time is too precious for me to take it. This is the story I told myself for a long time. And little did I realize that this is while we think we are getting a lot out of it, the mentor is also getting a lot out of this relationship.
It's a relationship like any other, right?
Right, and because we each look at things from a different vantage point, right? And so when they grow further in their career, they lose touch with what's happening on the ground, and we don't know what's happening above. So when you have this kind of an exchange, it's quite valuable to both sides.
So there is a year-on-year increase in the numbers of men taking up parental leave within our respondents' organisations. Where parental leave is fully offered to men, 28% of our respondents have noticed significant amounts taking up the opportunity. So it's still by far not the majority. 72% either do not know of any men having taken up the opportunity or notice only a real minority doing so. So what do we think about changing approaches to parental leave? Because this is moving quite quickly, this conversation. What this means when the makeup of the modern family includes same-sex couples, where this idea of a specific gender role belonging to a specific gender doesn't work anymore, and how are organisations responding to that? What are you guys seeing? Do you feel like there's positive change occurring? And what's going on within your own organisations?
You know, from what I have seen, the folks who have younger kids, and both the couples are working, I do see men taking leave as well. Because I cannot imagine those women continuing to work if they had to take leave every single time. Now, is it equal? I don't know. Maybe the women still take more leave, but I do see that for young families, the men do end up taking time off.
It's pretty similar for us in our company too. They've introduced the concept of parental leave, and I started seeing, I've been with eBay for 5 years now. In the last couple of years, which would be the last 2 years when my colleagues are having their second kid, I've seen men taking a lot more leaves because I feel that they feel it's acceptable and it's okay, and they wouldn't be losing out on their career or anything if they took that leave. And again, right, like it's how does your manager feel about it? How does your organization feel about it? So each time we have an all hands, it's literally a message from the top that says, hey, we want you to have your family first. So I do see them definitely taking a lot more leave.
These are important personal, events and occasions, right? The birth or an adoption, if you will. I mean, we always have our work in our careers. So I think it's extremely important for men to have access to that ability to take parental leave. We've encouraged folks on our team to do that, and we've had, again, lead by example in some cases, but we'll allow men to take up to 8 weeks. The first 2 weeks are taken normally right after the birth or adoption event, and then those remaining 6 weeks can be kind of spaced out over the next 6 months. So they can take a week at a time or take 2 weeks at a time, and it just allows them to be around or privy to what the needs of their own family unit might be. So I think your point around the changing family dynamic is one that is extremely important, and I think this is a benefit that should, again, help attract top talent, and ensuring that we have it available to everyone.
So 61% of our 2019 respondents described their company's approach to diversity and inclusion as favourable or very favourable. 33% see their companies employing many women in senior positions, and 70% have an official diversity and inclusion and equal opportunity strategy in place. But when we look at top level representation, only 19.5% have a diverse board, 8% as female CEO, and 19% a female CFO. A quarter of our respondents have D&I and equal opportunities recognised as a KPI, and this is something that I wanted to talk about with you guys here today. How do we hold companies to account for their targets or their strategies? What happens if they don't get the results that they want? What do we think could help companies to drive change?
I think this D&I cannot be an HR initiative, right? A lot of times companies think, we have set up a department, D&I is done, and they have KPIs and check the box, and we can now advertise on our website. But that's not how it works really, right? In real life, it should be like every person in the organization, are you being inclusive, right? And that can change from those conversations, from training, helping people see that even though we are different, we're actually the same, right? Because oftentimes us versus them happens when you don't see that behind the packaging, actually we're all the same, right? Or you don't understand, like when you would think the politically correct answer is when you have diversity, everything will work out really well. The reality is when you put a lot of diverse people, initially there's a lot of chaos.
The numbers you shared are a little bit shocking. I would have thought more representation at the CEO and CFO level, which makes me have some concern, right? How do we change that dynamic? I think it's one that we're talking a lot about diversity and inclusion, but is that filtering all the way up to the top levels of the organization? Which, if you're not leading by example at the top level, are you really walking the walk?
We have from our 2019 results the final depressing statistic that I'll share with you. 47% of our respondents this year felt they were not paid the same as their male colleagues at a similar level of seniority. So to your point, if these things aren't working, if the walk's not being walked, what can we do about it? Because the truth is that those 47% of 335 respondents do not know for sure that they're not paid the same, but there's a perception. So how do we change the perception that many women have that they're not valued as much?
I don't think this conversation has really reached a point where it's okay to ask, like, hey, how much is my colleague getting? I wouldn't go up to my manager and ask that. And why do I hesitate? There is no, like, if I have the same qualifications, if I'm doing the same job, then why should I not be able to know that statistics?
Yes.
I mean, my company knows everything about me. It's only fair that I know that I'm getting paid fairly. But it all boils down to if you're performing at the same level, then your pay should not be.
Another way to maybe counteract this would be like some sort of an audit. You have
Yes.
audit for every single thing.
Yes.
Why can't there be
Like that
audits
idea.
for organizations to check whether, like, is this really skewed in a...
So 41% of our 2019 respondents have felt excluded from networking opportunities or hospitality events. And this has been an interesting area because I think it's one that you don't think of as particularly obvious how this happens. So 60% said the reasons that they felt they were excluded were that it was a stereotypically male event. 57% felt their gender had made them feel excluded, and just under a quarter felt their age, just under a quarter parental responsibilities, and 12% their ethnicity. So what's something that people should be bearing in mind when they're organising networking opportunities?
You want to be able to appeal to a broad audience, right? Whether it's age, whether it's gender, whether it's ethnicity. I think those are all important factors that you need to be cognizant of as you make those decisions. I don't know that there's any single great answer to how to solve the problem. It's just being more aware, I think, right? And continuing to look for ways to involve as many people as you possibly can. You're always probably going to exclude someone. It's hard to get 100% involvement or participation there, but to the extent you can be just cognizant about maybe your own unconscious biases, I think that'll help.
That's a really good point, because I keep getting invited to these giant games, etc., where I have no interest in watching them.
But tickets to see Beyonce for a client event.
That would make a difference, right?
But what can you do? Like we
interests
talked,
are
right? You cannot really include everyone in everything. But yes, let's start that conversation. Let's start talking about what's more gender neutral, and maybe we'll find a solution. So.
The final area that I wanted us to think about was we've talked a little bit about what some of your thoughts are on how we get there. So one of the areas in which we profile our respondents every year is the use of quotas, whether they support them or whether they're against them. So this year, for female representation on boards, 46% of our respondents were in favour of a quota and 29% were against. And we also profiled them on their feelings for a quota for ethnic diversity on boards. 34% were in favour and 35% were against.
So in the 2 or 3 years since Fearless Girl came out, we've engaged with over 1,300 companies, and over 500, and I think 577 was the last count that we've had, have either committed or made a change to include a women representation on a board. So I think that I don't love the term quota either per se, but in order to effectuate change, I think it might in some ways be necessary. And if you go back to the argument around shareholder value and just diversity of thought and what emulates from that, we're not going to get there quickly unless there are some major changes.
And also I think a company where there isn't any diversity at board level isn't going to attract diverse talent. You need that top level representation to get at each level to retain that talent, right?
That's a very good point, because if those are the people making the decisions, they will again fall, back to the usual. So that's a good point. It's a chicken and egg problem. You don't know where to start, right?
Yeah, well, I'm sure diverse companies are now attracting the best in diverse talent, because the next generation is really thinking, where do I want to go? Not who's offering me a job, but they're proactively choosing.
Yeah, and I refuse to believe that there aren't any women who are not ready for board level jobs. I'm sure there are so many qualified women who are already ready for the next step. So that conversation is necessary to just make people aware that, hey, this is a possibility that a woman can be on the board, which I feel like wasn't there till companies like State Street actually started that conversation. Quota, I agree, is probably not the best term for it, but that recognition that is possible and women should be on boards if they're qualified, I think that was a great start. So
Wouldn't it be better to groom people like from the very early stages where you see potential that that they can be moved up? That might be a better way, because otherwise, if you do this in a forced way and these people are not ready, that might backfire.
exactly.
Yeah, and also if you push through people who are not ready, you might have people set up to fail, and that's
Exactly.
really unfair.
Yeah.
That puts your program back a couple of
Yeah.
steps for sure.
So I think just having a public conversation about this is incredibly powerful, and the power of symbolism, for example, with Fearless Girl, the conversations that started, you can't really put a price tag on that or a value on how important that's been for furthering this whole dialogue.
Mm-hmm. I think women by default sometimes don't think of those things as possibilities for them, and it sometimes takes an outside person. I've seen that in case of many women where it's been somebody else from the outside that comes and says, you know what, you're ready for this, you can go to the next
Yes.
level.
Yeah, women don't apply to jobs unless they're 100% ready, right?
100%
You have to be
ready.
tapped on the shoulder and pushed through the
So
door.
oftentimes that's just somehow hardwired in women, that they don't see the potential in themselves, and it takes somebody from outside to tell them or show them a path and be a champion and take them there. And so companies don't have many of those people. If we had more, then maybe.
Okay, excellent. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about or we haven't mentioned that you guys wanted to speak about?
One point I want to add is sometimes the only default career path that people know is the linear career path, but there are many different possibilities, and women where they are in their careers don't know or are not exposed to understand what those opportunities are. If companies can play a role and if they can spot talent and then say, okay, if you need to be here, then these are the things you need to accomplish, and we will facilitate this for you, you will see more women progress into more meaningful roles.
Okay, brilliant. So I want to thank all three of you for taking the time to come and speak about the latest results. So the report is out in October of 2019, and I look forward to this sparking many more conversations. But thank you so much. It's been a fantastic conversation.
Same.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
appreciate it.